Today we're talking about unifying the grid drawings, and one of the things we talked about in the beginning of this process was to work towards the mid-tone gray, but to make sure you had enough information down that you understood what was happening everywhere in the piece. I have created a document that's on the website called Unifying Your Grid Drawing. You need to print that out and read it before you begin, but I'm going to show you a little bit how to do that. So the first thing that we do when we're unifying a drawing that we've done is we work to get out of the mid-tone gray. So we're looking for places that we can push our values. This is a great drawing because this has a lot of different textures, and we need to figure out how we want to approach that. So I generally go to the negative space first. I'm actually going to turn this upside down. And the reason that I'm turning this upside down is because it will actually give us another way to draw that stuff. Now notice I did not remove the transparency all the way. I want to be able to flip it down if I have to look at something to make it darker. But Lydia would spend time making all of the things in her background darker that need to be darker. Now the reason for this is this line where the tree is, where it meets her hair, she has all of the values correct in here. But for us to see that, this value and the contrast needs to become greater. So she will start by going through her drawing. She's still using ellipses to draw here. And she's going to push different things darker so that she gets some differentiation between things. I turned this upside down so that she could work into the things she has back here. Remember, these are organic shapes. They're kind of blurred out because she's in the forest or backyard or wherever we were. But she has the map down here to fix this. She still needs to reference the drawing, okay? So the whole point is to pull these squares together across squares and to make sure as we are working with parts of the background that she is treating that whole area. If she gets confused and she doesn't know where she is, she can go back in here and I can see this square very clearly. And she can add another layer of value, and in this case, texture. We don't want the background to be more textured or more crisp, like we want her edges blurred, than the subject, which is the person. But I wanted you to see we can get this dark very quickly by working with the maps she already has and by pulling it across different squares. So it's important to watch how the tones go. She may have to go back into some of the negative space and knock that back. She may choose to blend her leaf forms a little bit using her smudger. When you use a smudger in this phase, you don't want to press down too much, but you just want to gently use it to blur things across. That will help us to determine that this is negative space. You can see how I went into this square and it starts to get darker. I'm going to watch all of my edges throughout the rest of the drawing. So it's this negative space that helps us see the hair, not the other way around. So we're not going to draw a line around things. We're going to work on darkening the space right next to the head, if that's what the photograph tells us to do, which it is. And she can soften some of that like this. So the first thing is the negative space and pushing the contrast. When I turn this around, you can see that this is starting to unify and the squares are going away. And as she goes through this, it'll do the same thing. Now what I would do is I would jump to the texture that is in her shirt. The reason that I'm choosing that is because this is very dark. Also, when we're working a drawing from many different angles, upside down, right side up, if we're working a portrait and there's light areas in anything, we want to do that last because we're going to pull those up so they're the brightest. So her next step would be to work this value, because she's got the perfect tone here, inside of her shirt across the squares. I'm drawing in the direction her blouse goes and pulling it up through the other parts. So any edges that are unclear, we're going to clear up here, and we're going to do it across the squares. Now, in this particular case, I would not smudge the blouse until the end, okay? But I want you to see how it's going to work. I am very softly using the ellipses that we talked about. I wanted you to see, you don't want to scrub too much with this or it'll pull the fibers up the paper. But if you gently use ellipses, it will not compress the paper, but it will move the graphite, so she'll have a nice smooth black. If you scrub with this point or with the smudger, it'll damage the paper and it won't accept more graphite. What we're looking for is a smooth black to determine this. Now, it may get darker in the end, okay? But for now, I've separated the blouse from the negative space. Now, the next technique that I want you to see is in the portrait. If we're looking at her sister, I have taken the point of my eraser and I have trimmed with scissors to make a point. So part of what we're doing is we're pushing the contrast and moving it out of the mid-tone gray. The first paragraph on the document is about that. Then we are working the textures in different ways. This is going to be a smooth black. This up here is going to be some mid-tone grays to black, but they're going to be in soft focus because they're in the background. Now in her hair, she's got everything going in the right direction, okay? And she's got her lights recorded. And this tip will go away right away. So you've got to make sure that don't cut off too much when you're doing it, but also make sure that you are using a sharp eraser or a flat edge to pull that up. We always, when we're taking lights back out of something, take up a little bit more than we need to. But her next step is going to be to connect the hair in the different parts of this person. This is a flat black behind the hair, but we are going to keep the texture of hair. So she may make sure that she has a tight line on the face here, but then I want her to bring the texture of the hair into it. So I went to the darks after I pulled up the lights, and I'm using my very sharp pencil to show me the direction of the lines. So I'm working the hair across all of the hair so it starts to have continuity. Hers already has continuity, but we want the darks to be made of line instead of just tone, so that we can differentiate what's happening in the picture. We can still pull this up lighter if we need to because there's a highlight there, but for now we're starting to get the depth we need. The final thing that she would do is she would use her kneaded eraser to pull up tones in the skin tone that need to be cleaner and lighter. This acts like silly putty. If your kneaded eraser is too black, you need a new one. They're 79 cents or $1 at Hobby Lobby. I have some in the class, but you'll need this at home too. So she'll go through, the very last thing she does, she's got a shadow underneath her chin. We're going to make sure that that's a tight value. And then on top of it, we're going to look for where we can press out those highlights so that it makes sense. You can paint with this. You can press this into the paper and it won't damage it. And you'll see you get a nice soft skin tone here. You have the linear quality here. You have the blurred quality here. You have the graphic quality here of high contrast between the black and the pattern.